What happens when one person simultaneously wears three faces: a dictator, an intelligence boss, and a close partner of the CIA, while at the same time serving as a key link in the international drug trafficking network? The story of Manuel Noriega, once sponsored, trained, and protected by the United States, is a clear illustration of the complexity, and even the brutality, of international politics in the second half of the 20th century. For that very man, after years of serving Washington's strategic interests, ultimately became the target of a direct military invasion launched by the United States itself. So what caused this strategic asset to be discarded without mercy? To understand the collapse of Manuel Noriega, we must return to the context of Panama and the world during the Cold War era. Manuel Noriega was born in 1934, coming from a poor family in Panama City. The only path for someone like him to rise within Panamanian society at that time was the military. Noriega attended officer training school, quickly displaying sharpness, secrecy, and especially an ability to manipulate information. In the 1960s, as the Cold War entered an intense phase, Central America became a silent battlefield between the capitalist and communist blocs. For the United States, Panama was not merely a small country. It was the controller of the Panama Canal, a vital maritime route linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, with critical economic and military significance. In that context, the CIA began searching for local figures who could be both loyal and effective. Manuel Noriega quickly came into their sights. He was recruited by the CIA at an early stage and trained at the School of the Americas, where the United States educated thousands of Latin American officers. From a mid-level officer, Noriega gradually became a valuable source of intelligence, on Cuba, on Nicaragua, and on leftist movements rising across Central America. In return, he received money, political protection, and above all, Washington's silence regarding his dubious actions at home. In 1983, Manuel Noriega officially took control of the Panama Defense Forces. Although he did not hold the title of president, he was the one who wielded real power. Panama entered a period of rule by an iron fist. The press was controlled, opposition suppressed, elections manipulated. But Noriega was not merely an ordinary military dictator. While publicly aligning himself with the United States and playing the role of an anti-communist shield in the region, he quietly turned Panama into an international drug trafficking hub. Cocaine from Colombia was transported through Panama, laundered through the country's flexible banking system, and then flowed into the U.S. market. Noriega accepted money from notorious cartels such as Medellín. In return, he provided state protection, ensured safe transport routes, and concealed illegal activities behind the facade of a loyal ally of Washington. The most controversial aspect of the entire story is this: many U.S. agencies clearly knew what was happening. Yet for many years, they turned a blind eye. Why? Because Noriega was still useful. In the fight against leftist governments and guerrilla movements in Nicaragua or El Salvador, Noriega's intelligence was worth more than any moral appeal. At that time, for Washington, a dirty but effective ally was still preferable to a government that might tilt toward the opposing bloc. However, history always has its turning points. By the late 1980s, the Cold War began to cool. The Soviet Union weakened, and the Berlin Wall was on the verge of collapse. The strategic value of assets like Noriega declined rapidly. Meanwhile, in the United States, the press and Congress increasingly applied pressure. Investigative documents exposed the tangled connections between Noriega and the drug underworld. Human rights organizations spoke out about repression in Panama. Rigged elections caused Noriega's image as a stable partner to collapse. In 1988, a U.S. federal court officially indicted Manuel Noriega on multiple charges related to drug trafficking and money laundering. That moment marked a fateful shift. From strategic ally, Noriega became a public enemy of the United States. And when a former ally could no longer be controlled, the chosen solution was no longer diplomacy, but military force. In December 1989, the United States launched Operation Just Cause. More than 27,000 U.S. troops were deployed to attack Panama, in one of the largest American military interventions since the Vietnam War. Washington declared three main objectives: capturing Manuel Noriega, restoring democracy to Panama, and protecting U.S. citizens and the Panama Canal. In reality, the attack was swift, intense, and caused severe damage to Panama. Residential areas, especially El Chorrillo where Noriega's headquarters was located, were heavily devastated. Thousands of civilians were killed or left homeless, the exact number remains disputed to this day. Noriega fled and eventually took refuge in the Vatican embassy. A symbolic image of the era, a once all-powerful dictator, now surrounded and isolated. The U.S. military employed psychological warfare, blasting rock music through loudspeakers day and night. This was not merely a strange detail, but a message: Noriega's time was over. On January 3, 1990, Manuel Noriega surrendered. He was arrested, handcuffed, and taken to the United States to stand trial. In the U.S., Noriega was sentenced to 40 years in prison, later reduced. He became the first Latin American ruler to be directly captured and tried by the United States. The fall of Manuel Noriega closed a dark chapter in Panama's history, but at the same time opened a series of questions that have never received definitive answers. Did the United States act for justice, or because its strategic interests had changed? Why was a drug trafficking ally tolerated for many years, until he became no longer necessary? And who bears responsibility for the innocent civilians who lost their lives in the 1989 invasion? Manuel Noriega was not merely a corrupt dictator. He was the product of an era in which power, drugs, and global politics were tightly intertwined, an era in which morality was often sacrificed for interests, and in which strategic assets could be discarded the moment they lost their value. Noriega's history reminds us that in international politics, there are no permanent allies and no permanent enemies, only interests that endure. And sometimes, the price of those interests is paid with the fate of an entire small nation like Panama.